Hello, friend. Thanks for joining me for another book chat. Today, let's spend some time with The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki. This book was originally published in 2021. This is the first book by Ruth Ozeki that I have read and chatted here on my channel, and I did enjoy it very, very much. I was interested to read this book because it explores the impact that inanimate objects have in our lives. And I thought that just sounded so interesting. So I decided to give it a read. As usual, this chat will be a spoiler-free chat. I won't talk about anything that I think would detract from a first-time reader's experience with the Book of Form and Emptiness. So having said that, what's this one about? So our main character, his name is Benny O. When the novel opens, he's about 12 years old, and his father is a jazz musician, and he is killed in an accident on his way home one night from a gig. This leaves just Benny with his mother, and both of them a bit lost. His mother, Annabelle, really tries to provide a stable home for Benny, but she's really struggling not only to care for herself and him and provide, get money, earn money, work and stuff, but deal with her grief as well. She can't seem to move on. She seems to want to stop time, whereas Benny, being like 12-ish years old, is sort of at that age when time cannot stop because he's being pushed to grow whether he wants to or not. So after about a year after the death of Benny's father, he starts to hear voices. The voices belong to the objects in the house. So, for example, like a shoe or a broken Christmas ornament. He hears them and feels like understands what they're feeling. So doesn't that sound cool? The problem is that not all objects are happy objects, right? Some objects have had happier lives than others. So some are angry, some are hurt or confused, some are even violent, but of course some are calm and peaceful. So there's a scene in the book where there are these refrigerator magnets, that they use to make poems like on your refrigerator. You can arrange them in different ways. And Benny and his father and the family in general used to just sort of randomly do these. And Benny's father had done one, had made a little poem right before he died. And his mother had kept that poem on the refrigerator for this whole year that had passed. And Benny rearranges the words at one point in the book. And his mother gets very upset because he's changing things, right? And she doesn't want things to change. But the magnets themselves wanted to be rearranged. Benny finds out. The quote says, he hadn't meant to dismantle his father's poem. The magnets wanted to be moved around to make new poems, and he was just trying to help them. So you can sort of see how it would be kind of hard to be Benny at this point in the book, a 13-year-old boy who hears and understands objects, and no one else around him does. So there's really no one that he can talk to about it. And when he tries to explain it in 13-year-old terms, no one really understands it. And of course, he gets diagnosed with having a mental illness. And so his mother, though, at this point is also struggling. As I mentioned, she struggled all along, and she's becoming a hoarder, what seems to be a hoarder. So the increasing clutter of things in the apartment brings sort of emotional comfort to Benny's mother, but it confuses him because he hears all these objects. And so he has this orderly bedroom, which is sort of like a haven or a safe space for him to go, where the objects are at peace and do not sort of call out to him in disturbing ways. He has trouble at school and he has trouble at home and stuff, but he realizes that the public library is another sort of haven he can go to, because the public library, the objects in the public library, the book says, understand how to whisper, understand how to talk quietly, and Benny really appreciates that. They speak in whispers. So through a set of circumstances that I won't go into here due to spoilers, Benny actually meets some others that are also outcast. They experience the world differently than the majority population, and for that reason, they are outcast. There's like this street artist who's also being diagnosed with mental illness that he meets in sort of the mental illness system, institutions and stuff. And then there's also this homeless philosopher poet that's in a wheelchair that he meets regularly at the library. But through these friends, then, he begins to find his way again. His mother also has some growth challenges that she needs to address, like I mentioned, and that also figures through the book. Her sort of journey is also in the book. So I think that's all I want to say about the plot itself, because I don't want to give away too much about it as far as, detracting from a first-time reader's experience with it, because there's a lot of growth that happens among all the characters, not just Benny and his mom, but the street artist poet, the street artist, as well as the philosopher poet, and everyone in the book, actually, and other characters that I haven't mentioned. So, it's general thoughts about the book. One very interesting thing about the book is the narrator. Now, you might have assumed from what I've been saying that Benny is the narrator, but he actually is not. The narrator of the book is the book itself. The book is a bit of a character unto themselves. Isn't that cool? I love that. The book discusses objects. So this book is about objects that can communicate, right? And what better way? A book is an object that communicates to us. A book actually is maybe one of the few objects that we can actually communicate with. And there's a lot of really super good quotes in this book about books. And the book actually gets started by saying, a book must start somewhere. One brave letter must volunteer to go first, laying itself on the line in an act of faith, from which a word takes heart and follows, drawing a sentence into its wake. From there, a paragraph amasses, and soon a page, and the book is on its way. Finding a voice, calling itself into being. A book must start somewhere, and this one starts here. I loved that beginning. That beginning of the book really just had me then for the rest of the book. There's quite a bit of other quotes about books. There's one here that says, when a book and a reader are meant for each other, both of them know it. And this is what happened when Annabelle opened Tidy Magic. When she read the first sentence, a shiver ran down both their spines, both her spine and the book Tidy Magic's spine. Tidy Magic is another book that features prominently in this book, in this story. There's another quote here that I really liked. Is it odd to see a book within a book? It shouldn't be. Books like each other. You could even say we're all related, enjoying a kinship that stretches like a rhizomatic network beneath human consciousness and knits the world of thought together. Books is sort of in the atmosphere, right? Books need writers, though, and the book says here, and what of the writer then? Well, as any book would tell you, writers are primarily a conceit, which doesn't mean that they aren't necessary, quite the opposite. Books need writers, of course we do. We don't have fingers, we can't type. Your big human brains are our vectors. Your sensual bodies are our vehicles, and your ambitions are the fuel we need to propel ourselves into beings. I love this sort of idea that books are out there just sort of waiting for a human vector to propel them out into the world, and books then reproduce themselves. On that topic, there's another quote that says, and were you to ask those books, they would claim the dozing writer. This writer is in the book that's in the library all the time. She's dozing off at her desk where she's working all the time. We don't know what she's working on, but anyway, the book is referencing her here. It says, they would claim the dozing writer is the one who has been chosen. They picked her. The book picks the writer. And while she's dozing, they are hard at work, colonizing her neural networks, that dark netherworld tucked away in the subconscious she calls her imagination. There they engage in their own form of conjoining, merging their DNA with her memory and experience, and bringing another of ourselves into being. I just love that. I think that is so cool. How books just work with the author. The book exists sort of independently of the author. I'm not an author myself, but I've heard authors mention this, that the book seemed to sort of write itself. So I think that's just so fascinating. So another sort of common theme here is about objects, and there's multiple examples of objects doing and saying all different kinds of things, all different kinds of objects. Made things and unmade things, there's a difference. Made things are like things like this computer. Unmade things are something like a tree. So there's a difference in the emotional state, or the emotional awareness of, or not awareness, but the emotional state of like a made object and an unmade object. So another thing is objects want to do what they do, right? Made objects like doing what they were made to do. There's a quote here that really illustrates that I think is so cool. It says, "Should he go find the iron? Ironing was important. Wrinkled sheets were like a wrinkled mind, troubling. He ironed his sheets so that he could have an untroubled sleep. And besides, sheets like to be ironed. And so he liked ironing sheets. He didn't ever iron things that didn't want to be ironed, only things that liked to be flat. But it wasn't just that. There was another reason too. He liked to iron because the iron loved the ironing board, and the ironing board loved the iron. They got lonely when they were apart." I thought that was so cool. The iron loves the ironing board, right? And then sheets want to be flat. They want to be in their best condition. So I thought that was just, so much fun. Finally, there's about the title of the book itself, the Book of Form and Emptiness. There's a quote that I sort of think that was the philosopher poet that I mentioned, the homeless philosopher poet sort of talks about. He's talking about a library return bin, right, where you put your books in to return them, and it's you put your book in the slot there. And he says, "I have become somewhat intrigued by this notion of a slot. That a slot is a thing we cannot deny. However, it is a thing defined entirely by a lack, by an absence of form, by negative space, by its own emptiness, form and emptiness. We know what isn't, but how can we truly know what is?" I love that quote too, and I don't exactly know what that means as far as translating into the title, The Book of Form and Emptiness, but I think it's really cool to think about. Okay, I think I will leave the chat there. I loved this book way more than I expected. I thought it would be kind of fun. It's way more philosophical than I expected. It's got a really great sort of story of growth and also found family and reuniting of a family. And so I really enjoyed it. Okay, I'll leave the chat there with that. My next chat, let me just call up the graphic. It's a book here, Cakes and Ale by W. Somerset Maugham. I will have a chat on this coming up soon. So until next time, take care.